We are recording. Matt, welcome to the podcast, mate. How are you, legend?
Thanks, legend. Yeah, good. Thanks for having me once again.
Occurrence. I was going to say, welcome to episode 200, and then I was like, I don't even know which episode number this is. I've really got to tally that up and get a bit better with that. But anyway, it's 200 and something, the episode, which is still blows my mind that we're in 200 odd episodes now. So, yeah, fantastic. All Amazing. Right. So enough waffling. I'm going to kick it off with the fact that, it's probably a monthly occurrence. I say you're coming on and we're having different conversations around certain areas or topics of the work. And we find that obviously we see a lot through our workshops and retreats and our programs and stuff, and common occurrences will come up. And we wanted to discuss today emotional triggers and 9 ways to deal with emotional triggers. But I don't know. I don't even know what triggers are. I've never been triggered. Have you been triggered, Matt?
Never, mate. I just peace, love, and mung beans going on over
here. Exactly. So just to break it down, so even though there's 9 things we're going to cover, it'll be over 3 areas. So what does it mean to be triggered? Then we're going to dig into more at the surface level and managing the situation of triggers. So they are the 9 ways that they're going to come up to deal with the triggers that are occurring at a time. But of course, then going deeper and getting to the root of why you even getting triggered in the first place. We're going to break down those areas for you guys over the next 30 minutes or so. So drum roll, let's rock and roll. Over to you, son. Triggered. What does it mean to be triggered? And I will contribute in this conversation. Don't worry. I just,
Yeah, no, I'm not worried, mate. I just love the fact that the first part of it, just to get the wheels turning, always comes back into my lap. I should know these things. It's been too long. What is being triggered? So an emotional trigger to me is an experience, a person, an event, something that's happening outside of yourself, typically, that causes an emotional reaction. That's the best way I would define it. What would you add to that?
Exactly that. Something that feels like beyond your control as well, which is a big element of it, because we kind of react instead of respond. And I think the depth of the reaction starts to highlight then something within that needs to be investigated further. But the one thing that was a big aha moment in my life, thinking about certain areas, because there's certain times in our lives that we get, things get really heightened, and it's like, why is that person always triggered? Why is that person in my life? And we can get on the train of regurgitating, putting somebody else down, and becoming the victim in that role as well. And I've been there certainly and done that. And it wasn't actually I started becoming aware of these things. We're not aware of it, which we'll go into in a moment. But I often look at as well, talking to the last point on this, you could say there's wounds underneath, or trauma, or things that we haven't addressed or healing through our life. And I always remember hearing the analogy once, it's like if you got like a slight scratch on your arm and you got a feather, and tickled it, you're not going to feel anything. But if you've got this deep gaping wound that's hypersensitive and feel like literally a cat hair could touch it, and you're going to yell, what the hell, and that's how I start to look at the triggers within us, like what is going on under the surface, what is the depth of something that could be heightened very easily from a scenario that technically might not bother you in normal and other circumstances.
Yeah, you went right down the deep end, mate. Like we were going to talk about the surface. It's okay. I'm just like, and then you get my gears turning, and this is going to be a really deep conversation. But I think we should lay some groundwork first before we dive down that, because you just went from, typically what I think we identify with is that somebody or something else is upsetting me. I think this is the first stage, is that, the world is happening to me, and it's like everything outside of me is causing this upset within me. We don't realize that we actually have command of our emotions and our thoughts and our entire system. In fact, we have command over our biology and our nervous system if we have practice and awareness of it. So a lot of times, like we say in our workshops and the retreats and whatnot, it's that, the autonomic nervous system is running on its own automatically, and it's under our radar, so we don't pay attention. So we think that things are that's just the way it is, and we don't have any control. But obviously through meditation, through what the mystics and the ancients have illustrated, that you can actually change your state of being just by an intention behind it. And so to me, it's starting to pull back the projection that we put on the world around us. And so with a trigger, we can actually look at managing those triggers from that surface level, because if we don't even want to go inside and say, okay, there's something inside of me, like you say, that open wound that's causing that little cat hair or feather to be a really intense experience, then it's just, well, how do you manage the cat hairs that are brushing up against the wound without even looking at the wound? And there are strategies and techniques to manage that, because that component on the surface, am I making sense 100%. Here? Right. Okay. So that component on the surface then is that we've got to start looking at our reactions, and where a reaction is stemming from. It's from emotional imbalances. And that when we are in a place where we're more stressed, we don't have enough sleep, we're not eating the right foods, we're not taking time to be with our thoughts and the things that are unresolved within us, like all these different factors or different stresses that are coming in to create that hypersensitivity, then we don't really have the capacity to deal with our emotional state. And then anything can set us off, and then it just goes into this snowball of rolling down the hill, right? And it's like we don't have any control of that then. But if we're in a place where we build a resilience within ourselves, and we build an emotional resilience and emotional strength, and we learn how to handle our emotions and be with our emotions and manage our emotions, then these triggering events come up, and we have what we practice in meditation, that ability to observe instead of react. And so even before going into what's going on under the surface and what is this event or person that's causing an upset within me, illuminating within myself, I have a lot of tools and techniques that I can develop through practices like what we teach to create a greater resilience and a greater balance and peace and harmony, even when all this stuff is going on. And then from that space, we can start to dive under. So who's pinging? Is that me pinging? That's or you?
Definitely you.
Mate.
Yeah, that's okay.
I got nothing, mate. I got everything closed. I'll dig deeper. Okay, it's not coming through?
No.
It must just be my mental
exactly.
Pings. Go on.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you say, and we don't address so many of those aspects. The thing that kept coming to me as you were sharing then is allostatic load, which is the collective stress load onto our nervous system at the end of the day. But there are so many factors now in the modern day society that are, I guess, putting if we don't meet it with resilience and an emotional resilience, we will get kicked and pushed around very easily in society now, and by people and by things, because we're all running from these more stress responses, and if we don't start to actually have a practice and take command and become aware of and delve into this work passionately, it continues to perpetuate and show up in other areas in our lives constantly. That's what it did for me, until I was like, you know what, I'm actually going to do this. I'm 100% in. I've had enough of this bullshit. I've had enough pain for this. I'm tired of playing the victim role. I'm actually going to move past that. And as I start to step into that and start to become open, like even when we talk about the HEART acronym with the H for humility, and start coming from that place, thinking I don't know it all, actually I know nothing, then I'm able to start to see something from a different perspective and actually become aware of the very patterns and behaviors and the things that I've been perpetuating my entire life. I just wasn't willing to, or didn't even have the know about how to actually become fully conscious and aware of many of those aspects of myself. moving forward.
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing. There's a couple things that you alluded to. One was, it's just slipped my mind. What did you say? You said, crap, where'd it go? There's the allostatic load, you said it twice, and I was like, mate, that's good. We got to talk to that because it just glosses over.
Wow.
Totally lost it, mate.
You're on
totally
fire with this podcast. You're not only pinging, the brain's lost it.
Wait, I don't know. Totally.
It'll come back in about 35 minutes right at the end when we've covered everything anyway.
Yeah. Well,
should we go into the 9 ways to start dealing with the triggers, and that might ping you back online at some.
Yeah. Bring me back online. I've just lost the plot, mate. So you're gonna have to drive this one.
So number 1, let's go into the managing the situations that come up, and that is identify that you are triggered.
Yes. Now I've got it. I've come back online. I must have had like a spiritual disconnect. The Wi-Fi had to change satellites there. So there was this victim. Victim was the word that spiked when you said that. And I wanted to bring people's attention to that because I think we can gloss over this because our egos are often engaged and we say, I'm not a victim. What are you on about, mate? Like I'm in control here. And this person did something to me, or this event is what's causing this trigger in me. But the idea is not that you are helpless and weak, let's say, is that being in the role of the victim comes from putting our power on things outside of ourselves. I think that's as simple as I could put it.
That's a much better way of putting it.
So that's why I wanted to bring that up, because it's like as soon as I heard victim, I thought people's backs could get up. And it's like, well, where are you putting your attention? And we have no control ultimately over the world outside of ourselves. We have the most control and command over what's going on in our perception of the world outside of ourselves. And this is where the work then comes in and starting to own that. And as we peel back that and bring it back to ourselves, then we're on the journey. And then it's important to have the practice. And that's when we start to gain traction, because empowerment comes from knowing yourself. And so turning those mirrors of projections or triggers back upon ourselves gives us that opportunity to look into places that we may not be aware of.
Perfect. Yeah.
That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
I knew there was something. And so and then it also feeds into the first one you said, identify what triggered you. And so on the surface, obviously, the person experiences a thing outside of ourselves that's triggered us, right? And it's good to identify that, because ultimately the trigger causes an emotion, and then we get lost in the emotion. If the emotion is heightened, then the logic and the awareness drops. And so we really don't have the capacity to start to unpack this or manage it if we're in an emotional reaction, because that's at the forefront. And then that becomes the reality, and that becomes the loudest thing speaking to us, the anger, the hurt, the pain, whatever. And then we start to make choices and take actions upon the anger, the hurt, the pain, the fear, whatever. And those are very disempowered emotions and stances to take in our lives. And ultimately, from those choices and actions that we take from that stance, we create a very volatile experience of what life becomes for us.
One thing that I find fascinating, especially when you think about the power of intention or unconscious intention behind our actions that we do and our thoughts and how that mirrors back in our life, quite often, once we've identified a trigger, quite often it's people. And this was happening to me in a previous business partnership. I mean, I've been in many businesses over the years, and there was a particular scenario where I was continually getting triggered from someone else, but being in a victim role, even though it's not a victim, that I'm giving my power outside of myself and not owning myself. What was happening was then I was actually expecting to have the same scenario every time I turned up into these situations. So intentionally, I'm actually setting an intention of rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
So
You're
I was actually
perpetuating it.
perpetuating the issue.
Yeah.
So until I fully started to identify the fact that I was being triggered, but then having to break that pattern as opposed to just expect it to happen every time I show, oh, that person always behaves that way. They never change. That's always going to be like that. And then, and all of a sudden I'm putting something beyond myself. And through that intention and expectation, 9 times out of 10, the patterns kept reoccurring because I was bound by it as well, not only emotionally, physically, but intentionally, energetically as well, which I find fascinating. So it's really important to start to become very aware of that, so we are not then perpetuating those triggers. That's what I want to say on that.
Exactly, 100%.
So I think that will lead into number 2, unless you. No,
No, I'm just taking this in. This is I had a little introspective moment there on a live podcast.
you had too many already. All right. Where's Matt? Bring him
right. Okay. Yeah. So identify what trigger. Well, first you got to identify you're triggered. I guess was the first one. Huh? Then number 2 is then why did they trigger you? And these are all steps to decompress the reactiveness that you're holding, right? So it's like, how can we pull it apart and come back and start to gain that larger vantage point? So first you got to be aware that you are in a triggered state. Second, you've got to then identify what it is. So if you start to see, well, what is it in that person or that experience that's causing the trigger, then you pull yourself out of it. You're not so enmeshed in it. And I think that's where number 2 and the number 3 obviously says that, pause and then remove yourself from the situation. So on a physical level, you can actually take yourself away. I think this is an important thing because a lot of times we talk to this kind of, somebody's triggering you, or an experience is a triggering thing, bringing this emotional upheaval, and it's something inside of ourselves that we need to deal with. And we still stand in the line of fire while we're dealing with it. And like, that's not what we're talking about. It's like, nobody needs to be in an abusive or confronting situation over and over and over again. If somebody is causing pain or bringing trauma or upset into your life, a very good strategy is to have solid boundaries and to remove yourself from that situation, whether temporarily or permanently, if you need to. Yeah. But within that, you can then process the internal experience of what that was illuminating for you without having to have, shots fired over your head.
And one of the best things, that pause and remove yourself from the situation scenario and identify why someone triggers you, go hand in hand for me. Because sometimes I'll have an email or something that really triggers me, or like, what the fuck? How can you say that or do that?
Yeah.
And like, don't you see what I'm trying to do? Don't you see my perspective here? Like, and then all of a sudden I can feel my blood like instantly, and it's like, whoa, Jesus Christ, guy, breathe, navigate, slow down. Or if I can feel tension within a person or a conversation, it's like, you know what? Let's pick this up in 10 minutes. I'm going to walk, breathe, or whatever it might be, or say, let's address this tomorrow when we've got time to decompress and reflect. Because when we start to become triggered and emotions heightened and we go into like this predatory defensive state, we never actually end up really getting to the truth of things. It becomes a very reactional response. And quite often we look back upon it, go, shit, I wish I hadn't said that or did this. And hence why starting to become more aware of our emotions and to navigate that system in a moment-to-moment basis helps. But I always find just going, you know what? I'm just going to go and walk in nature for 10 minutes, or I'm just going to leave that for 24 hours and come back tomorrow. And then I'm sure I'll have love in my heart.
Yeah. No, that's the like we say with the mind, when our own internal dialogue is triggering us, and in the processes when we're trying to meditate and create a stillness of the mind, and it starts to chatter, and then that mantra that I always suggest for people is that I hear you, I love you, let's talk later. And that always quiets down that mind, and it's what you're talking to as well. You acknowledge the person. I hear you, I do love you, and let's talk about this later. And then going down the NVC route, it's nonviolent communication is then at a time, when is that we're going to come back? Let's take it a break and we'll be back in an hour and talk about it. So then we're not left hanging. So yeah, that's an incredible tool. And yeah, so we've got the top three, right? So we've got first knowing that you're triggered, then why, starting to explore why creates a bit of distance from your emotional reaction imposed upon that person in the situation. And then pause, give yourself space from the situation. And then the fourth one is feel the emotion. See, we're in a society that's emotionally challenged, right? And that we just don't address it. And they're suppressed, they're judged for whatever we're feeling. We're judged, we suppress our emotions, we run from our emotions.
Why do you think, and speaking of men and women, but I know men are fantastic at this, but so are women, but why is it we fear our emotions so much? To truly feel what it is we need to feel, to allow that energy to move, to allow that charge move through the body and allow itself to not be held. I always keep thinking about energy can neither be nor created nor destroyed. It just moves from one form or the other. So that's how I kind of look at emotions, is allowing that energy to move through the body freely, to express itself, to come out, and it's done with. But we don't allow that to happen, very rarely. But we fear it so much.
Absolutely. Because we do fear it, don't we? I think if you look, and you can go from both men and women, there's different stories that are enmeshed into what's okay to feel and what's not okay to feel and why. And they are different stories, but they take you to the same result of that it's not okay to allow your full range of emotions. Men are supposed to be tough and they're supposed to, pull your boots up and deal with it. It's just a little cut. Don't worry about it. Move on. Your leg's only hanging off by one thread. Don't just put it back together. Move on. Women are like, you're too emotional. There's too much. Pull it in. Or many, many, many stories and versions of that, I think, are imposed upon us from what we're conditioned into to believe. And so it's not okay from a logical standpoint. Then from an emotional standpoint, I think it's a vulnerable place. You start to open into that well of our authentic self, our real self. And we're so practiced at wearing masks and hiding and playing roles on who we need to be. And then I think the final component that I tend to witness and observe in myself is that it's just too big. There's too much. I don't know where to put it. And if I let this go, I'm just going to fall apart and I'm not going to be able to manage. And I've got to manage my life. It's a survival mechanism, right? One. And I think that for what I witness a lot in the work, for me, my journey was, I really didn't start to, I guess I was a very sensitive child and really allowed, it was like, I wore my heart on my sleeve a lot, but trying to be a man, suppressed that. And then I didn't really re-identify with that until after my mom died. And then I was lucky enough to be thrown into the the pool of Los Angeles and all the weirdness and different opportunities that were there. And I was in an acting class where we actually started to learn how to express our emotions. And my acting class was two things I learned in that. One was, it was a catharsis for me to let go of the grief that I was feeling for the loss of my mom. And two, it was in my training grounds for learning how to work with energy, and that the emotional free flow of energy and creativity that wanted to move through me, as I let that move, I gained access to a greater inspiration, a greater potential of information that not only fueled the scenes that I was working on or the role that I was playing, but also in my life, I started to live from that state, and that the emotions would free things up to open my eyes to greater possibilities. And so in that journey of 5-10 years, in that space and that training. It was an unfolding and a reconnection to the importance of my emotions and letting them move, and how it freed me up in my life. And so in that, I also then witnessed, and what I see in the work now, of people coming in and having that really tight contraction on whatever it is that they're holding in themselves, the emotions that they're afraid to feel, the events that they're afraid to process, the trauma and the drama that they've just put under the rug and not wanting to confront, is that it's so big, it's so massive. And I always use the analogy of that, it's a balloon full of air. And if you take the neck of that balloon and you pull it taut, it's just going to squeak out and go, right? And it's just going to take ages for all that air to come out. But if you completely just let it go, it goes around the room and then it's released. And so it may appear big because the opening that we are compressed upon and allowing through is so small. But if we allow it to completely open, completely let go and surrender, it can happen in a heartbeat, and we release that. And when we get to the other side of that, we feel how freeing that is to allow the emotion, and that we then have access to a greater part of ourselves, because all that stuff is compressed down upon our true essence and the life that's wanting to move through us. So that was a long-winded answer.
I knew I should have asked you that question. Bloody hell. No, but it's spot on. And once you got to really feel it to heal it. You know, we say even at the retreat, what's coming is going. So there's this immense contraction. It's this holding on. The body beyond the mind is like, no freaking way. And then when you finally feel safe enough to just let go, then you say that's like letting go of the neck of the balloon. And it's like, you know, it become that energy is moved, is transformed, and is freeing. But what I find blows me away, and what's happened many times in my life, is that it shifts your paradigm and it shifts your lens, and you're seeing every single situation and moment then through a different embodied person. So you're not recreating those emotions that were keeping you trapped, because I think locked emotions or not being able to talk is we can become prisoners of our own selves, and we don't allow ourselves to lean into more joy or love and peace, because we're just not familiar with those states, and they can actually feel more uncomfortable than the very emotions that we want to move through. But that's the familiar self, and we tend to then just hold on to that because that gives you a sense of safety. So then we work into the construct of the mind and the ego as well, and the protective self that's identifying itself with that. And that's why you always hear like a breaking down of the ego, getting beyond that into, as Ibrahim Karim said, your roommate that's ever present, been sitting there quietly waiting for you to have a conversation with him that we don't address to. But it's powerful. And if we start to allow ourselves to not fight the emotion, there are so many distractions in life now that we do not have to feel that emotion. You can put on a TV show, you can eat extra chocolate or have some ice cream or have some wine, or you can phone your friends, you know, which are all, obviously there's moments for these things to occur, but if you're using it to constantly suppress an emotion, it's going to show up in your body some way at some stage. And there's going to be a point where you're going to have to walk through that. I think. I feel.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the amount of energy that it takes to hold those emotions back is debilitating. And it's like, and you know, if we think, I mean, always lean into the concept of life or consciousness is all vibration, and to be a vibration, it needs to move, right? And that when we collapse down on an emotion or an identity or a role or whatever it is, and we hold that down, we're holding back the flow of life, the vibration of life that wants to move through us. And we're like, well, why can't I embrace the fullness and totality of my dreams and my hopes and my desires? And it's all because we've got our hands full of the holding back of that. We got the brakes on, and that takes a tremendous amount of energy. I mean, the essence of life itself, to hold that back is exhausting. and so it's like, and then, you know, we talk about how our nervous system does this as well on a physical level. of when there's certain things that we're holding in the body and perpetuating in the body, like you say, we're creating that pattern, that way of being. And then we take the energy away from the processes that create balance and harmony and joy and peace and love. And so all of our energy, all of our resources then go to a holding, a contraction, a resistance, and that becomes the conditioned way of being. So we don't have then the capacity to actually nurture a love, a happiness, a joy within ourselves. So then that all stems from holding back our emotion, not feeling what's there.
It's crazy.
It's insane. But yeah, we could talk about that for days. So that was only 4, and we come down into more techniques then to feel that emotion and to become present. Would be breath work is what we put as an actual one of the 9 is I think it's breathing. It doesn't have to be breath work. I mean, when I think of breath work, I think of an active process to help release emotion, to help release resistance, to open myself up. But breathing in itself changes the nervous system, gains access to the heart, gains access to all the systems in the body. It's at the basis of everything. And then if we are mindful of how our breath is moving, it gives us that potential then to navigate through challenges and to nurture in more balance.
Yeah. Simply slowing the breath down. You can do a box breath. Like if I'm thinking that, I'm putting myself in a situation where I'm triggered or I'm feeling anxious, my emotions are heightened in that moment. And it's like, okay, I want to work with this, not fight it. Right. And that's when normally we will go to the crutches that we can lean upon to just cut that emotion off, cut that feeling off. But like you say, you can use the breath to work with it, and just simply by breathing equally, it could be a 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. That's a box breath, very simple, or exhale longer than the inhale. What I always do now, I've always is imagine I'm doing that breath, but with my awareness in my heart, because not only the breath regulates the autonomic nervous system, so does the heart. And then you can combine together, and then you can actually just start to feel. And then I notice where I've got tension, start letting go, and I anchor my awareness to the breath, which allows me to still the mind as opposed to running off in the monkey thoughts that it wants to fight in that moment. And they're very important aspects, and they're very powerful. They're so simple. We just go, yeah, whatever. I'm just going to hyperventilate and scream.
So as you're talking, it reminds me of the process that we always bring into the work is the left hand on the heart and the right hand on the belly. And that that is a simple posture to hold. It doesn't look too weird. You could do that in the middle of the shop somewhere, right? Or anywhere. It doesn't matter. Nobody would clock it that you're doing something weird. You're just holding this. But in that response, you're coming back to your body. Your heart's under the left hand. The breath is under the right hand. And you can drop in. And it also then sends a signal subconsciously to yourself that you're held, that you're safe. And it's like, why don't we do that? It's so busy going, you. Just stop pointing and bring the hand back to yourself and just me. What's going on with me?
It's funny.
God, if we could all just stay in our own lanes.
It's funny how we got to be right all the time as well as humans. I do find that interesting.
Yeah. And a difference of opinion. Why does a difference of opinion have to make somebody wrong? It's like we can, I think a lot of times the triggering comes into because somebody sees something differently or perceives something in a completely contradictory way that you do. And it's like, well, no, you're imposing on my reality and it's not allowed. And it's like, well, in essence, we have as many different realities on the planet as we do beings on the planet. And that everyone's perception of it is a different world. And so I think, especially today, as we're looking in a polarized world and it's becoming more and more device, just
it's
separate.
nuts. And I think about this from I guess an evolutionary spiritual perspective as well. Like if you got source consciousness, that is absolute truth, then you got us
Yeah.
having a slither of that on our perception of a slither of truth. We don't know absolute truth. We've just got, and then we got the mind interpretation. And then you got 8 billion people on the planet all having their own slight slither of the absolute truth. And then it's only if you take the 8 billion collectively and took all that data, would you then probably get a closer perception of absolute truth.
Truth. Yeah.
Like it's nuts.
That's it. It is. And then we sit in that little sliver of truth and then we say, this is reality. This is the only thing that is. And if you're against it, you're wrong. If you're for it, you're right. And it's like, well, no, why? We can all be ultimately right. The duality that we adhere to is just
well, this is the other thing, because we can only, like, I build my, I guess, framework of reality from my experiences in life, right? And as I slowly get older and wiser, well, wiser is debatable, but as
very debatable, man.
My perception of reality and truth continues to shift, but I continue to lean in, and that's why humility is so important to then bring back into this in the first place, and that I'm actually not staying in my little exploration bubble of going nowhere, because we tend to fall into the same habits, the same patterns, the same life. And all of a sudden our truth becomes perpetuated from the information we receive through noise, and we end up living. I think it's like from the age of 35, pretty much most of your learning is done. We settle for the same job, we settle for and we don't have that exploration of life anymore. That's challenging our perception of reality, which I find fascinating as well. So if we don't have that curiosity and exploration and beginner's mind coming into everything, how are we supposed to then expand our truth?
Yep. It becomes stagnant, doesn't it? And then it ultimately isn't truth anymore.
But it's true to us because that's all we know.
Exactly.
And there lies the problem.
Exactly.
So it's like somebody can easily put down the work we do because they're on the outside looking, have no idea, no concept, never listened to a podcast, nothing. They will look at that hippy dippy shit. Where you're, I said, whoa. Come and hang out with us for a week. Well, let's see what your perception of reality is going to be then. But if they're not willing to step in and be open and look into that, then the issues will continue to get perpetuated because they're not willing to look outside of themselves in those moments, which can be challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. So that leaned into number 7,
6.
didn't it? Allow yourself.
6.
Oh no, 6. So remind yourself of the truth. Yeah. So getting off your pedestal, getting off your idea of what is true, and opening to more.
Yeah. One thing for me for that, just to add on that, I know we've been, God, I can't believe it's taken us this long to get to 6, but the, but I always go back to the quote, the mind thinks, but the heart knows. And if you're willing to develop a relationship with your own heart, which they say the shortest journey is the toughest one, going from the head and moving into the heart. If you start to come back to that place and reconnect to that, then you're able to see past the noise and the clutter and the triggers and everything and get back to the essence of truth, really. But we just don't allow ourselves to really feel into that aspect, and I've just know from my own life that the more aligned to my truth I become, the simpler my life is and the more it flows, period.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. You want to add anything to that?
No, I think we've beat the horse. 7 then comes into allow yourself to receive love, and Your phrase is "let it in," isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's an important component. Just to allow the love in, like let yourself off the hook. Basically, I think even if we do dive down the hole of taking responsibility for the way that we're perceiving the event or the person that is triggering us, and then owning our projection of our perception on them, we can still beat ourselves up and be hard
Because
on
we keep getting
ourselves.
reacted to that situation because we haven't dealt with the root cause, right?
Exactly. So it's like just let yourself off the hook, doing the best that you can, find some compassion, some kindness, some love for yourself. And then you won't be so triggered because you're building that space
You
of
said,
nurturing
yeah, you said it
love.
right there, mate. And it's just do your best, because it's. I think all this work, there's never perfection. It's only progress, and we get caught up and seduced by the goals and having to get to this point to achieve this, and then I'm gonna be much happier when I get over there, and it's all about the journey, and it's so cliche, and just having progress. And for me, about it doesn't matter what your ability is like, and we always say this at the retreats, right? It's about the intent that you bring behind it is is the glue. That's what really starts to pull things together and make things shift. So even if you suck at all this, but you've got you're intentionally trying to, coming from the right place, things will move. And that's when it comes back to, like you say, allow yourself to receive love and be kind to yourself. If you,
Well, yeah, and you speak to the retreats as well. I think that's what we offer ultimately, is that we tend to create an environment and a life around ourselves that ultimately isn't so loving or kind, and that when we bring people to the retreats and they take that leap, they step into a big environment of love and compassion and kindness, and just being there.
but
Once you just let it
totally,
in, you
but
got to
it
let it
comes from
in.
strength, and I think that's a perception that gets. Otherwise, you can go down the perception of, well, they just go around hugging each other, wearing roses, and you know, that's the thing. But it's like when you,
That's just you. I keep it
yeah,
grounded.
right. But when you totally are 100% in your body, you're owning yourself. You're empowered. It's like the leaky bucket. All the holes have been fixed where you're giving your energy away, and you can own that strength. Then the greatest power starts to show up in becoming vulnerable, becoming compassionate, caring, and coming from love. It's
Yeah,
massive, massive. I was going to say one more thing, but I can't remember what it
absolutely.
was. So we'll go on.
Oh, cool. You caught my disconnect. All right, moving down then to 8. Give. We wrote down give, or give
It's
gratitude.
I was saying, be thankful
Um,
for the trigger. Yeah.
be thankful for the trigger. Be thankful for the awareness. Be thankful for the opportunity.
Why should we be
Be thankful.
thankful for the trigger when your blood's boiling, you're angry, you've just honked the horn the third time at the car driver that cut you up?
Because if anybody that's actually got to the other side of a trigger, it's an opportunity to gain a deeper awareness of ourselves and gain more empowerment within our lives and a greater capacity to live more fully. So to me, it's an opportunity. It's I think Wayne Dyer always talked about that your soulmate is ultimately the guy in front of you that cuts you off, because they're teaching you something. There's some growth that can be found in the discomfort that is emerging in the relationship. So, your soulmate's not somebody that's going to make it all warm and fuzzy and happy days. Your true soulmate is somebody that's going to trigger the shit out of you and help you find your true
Yeah.
self.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
can you say that last bit? Because beyond whatever sits on the other side of that trigger is wisdom, basically. And and if you don't have the trigger, you're
exactly.
not going to become aware of it. Giving you the opportunity, that's where I need to start
Yeah.
exploring.
Mm. Yeah, it's a window in.
Yeah. Number 9.
I think we covered number
Create
9,
boundaries.
kind of. Create boundaries. So walking away,
Yeah.
being clear. Yeah.
And I think your boundaries the more you lean
Mm.
into this work, I found in my own life anyway, my boundaries became stronger. So the more I became,
Yeah.
the more I got to know thyself, the more empowered I became, and the more I could then hold space for myself and stay in my truth, for me more. And then that's when more boundaries would come from. So then I'm not doing things because there's a part of me that's feeling, I don't know. I guess coming from a place of feeling empty or feeling lonely or feeling this or whatever that emotion is, we tend to fill that as opposed to having the boundaries around us and then coming from that place of empowerment at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, if you don't know yourself, how are you going to create boundaries? It's like, where do you put a boundary around? I don't know.
Yeah.
I identify the wholeness of yourself and what is right for you and authentic. And then that authenticity will start to then feel the invasion of inauthenticity and imposition that is not aligned with that truth.
Maybe when you come up with some really great pillars today, that no, that's perfect. Like when you're coming from a place of, if your boundary is authentic, and if you're living from authenticity, when inauthenticity penetrates that boundary, you will feel it and notice it. That
Oh, yeah.
right
Yep,
there,
100%.
that's the bit that's going on social media. We're passing that everywhere. I think that's huge.
It is. Well, that's been my journey, I think, because I started way back when doing massage work, and a lot of times people's emotions, like I would empathetically pick up their emotions and take on their shit, and we all do this. This is the thing, we all do this, but we don't identify it. And it wasn't until I started to realize what was mine that I could then differentiate with when I was taking on theirs. Otherwise, it's just stuff. And so I really had to get to understand my state, my emotions, and my inner landscape to then be able to untangle what I am meshing into when I work with somebody so closely. And that rippled into my life, and it's an ongoing process. Where do I start and they begin? Where do they end and I begin? And if we don't know that, then we're lost.
Wow. So there's
Wow.
there's 9 great points for triggers, and we did mention about going deeper, getting to the root of the triggers as well. But obviously that is a process, and that's what we teach at the end of the day, right? It's the tools and how to navigate this what can feel like this out of control terrain, and start to work with that and come back so we can start to connect to that authentic self and have the
well, it's the healing of the wound, isn't it? So I think we talked to how to deal with the cat hair, the feather that's touching the wound. All right. And the deeper component is then to start to heal the wound and looking at the cause of that wound. And that's where you get to the root. There's a reason why there's a wound there. And that comes through a practice, a showing up for yourself, of being present with your emotions, all the stuff that we talk about here, rinse and repeat, and being in that space where the layers of the onion start to fall away and we can get to that core. Say, oh yeah, I get it now. This was something that I've pushed so far down behind so many layers and identities of who I am and roles that I need to play and busyness that I need to uphold in my life to distract myself from actually getting to that root. Then when I let that go, then the wound heals, then the triggers are gone, and not gone completely, but that trigger,
Not later.
that one, that first guy that cut you off, but then the guy that sideswipes you, that's another story. Or then runs up the rear of you, like fuck.
But I can't tell you how many people we've heard over time that have been working with us, or doing the work themselves, that have come to the point where they've noticed, where they go, "Oh wow, I didn't even notice that person doesn't even trigger me anymore. I wasn't even fazed by it." Like their whole perception is shifted and shifting. That what we were imposing upon her in the first place becomes a very different reality.
Yeah, because you've ultimately changed
Yes.
yourself. And in the changing of yourself, the world around you changes, right? The old
Exactly.
cliche.
Amazing. Have we got anything to? Do you want to add anything to before we wrap this podcast up?
I think to squeeze that in a day before I'm heading on the road to get the Wollongong and Canberra and do 2 events in a row, like
You're done.
I'm done.
You're checking out.
So hanging up my time card.
By the time people listen to this, Canberra and Wollongong would have passed. So if you're hearing this and you wanted to come, don't worry about it. We'll be back. But what other workshops do we have coming up? We're going to be back in Newcastle, by the looks of it, in April with the Live and Flow. So we'll be.
Well, before that, we got Tweed Heads. Just come over the border for all you Gold Coast people. And Coffs Harbour. Yeah.
Then we're going to be in Newcastle in April, and we'll potentially looking at Orange and Sydney in May. And we have the retreats 3-night at the end of July, and the 5-night in August. And we'll be releasing them soon. They'll sell out pretty quickly as well. So if you are hearing this and you're curious about coming, just drop us an email or sign up to our newsletter, and which is liveandflow.co.
Don't forget our inner self mastery course that's launching.
It is, my God. Yes. We're busy people. So that's working with us at a deeper level over a period of a few months, which will be, that'll be online. Kicking off mid-March. But I think by the time you hear this podcast, if you're keen to jump on that and have guidance from myself, Matt and Petra over a few months weekly, that will be, act on that quickly, basically. That's application only, so you can book a phone call. Just drop us an email again through the website, liveandflow.co. Amazing. Thank you so much, sir. I will see you I'll see you tonight on the call. Remember that?
100%. Yep. See you then.
Thanks, legend.
Okay, thanks, man.